This is Nantucket Island. It's about 30 miles off the coast of Massachusetts, and I'm standing in front of the Shipwreck and Life-Saving Museum. I first heard about this museum when I read a book by John Ortberg about 10 years ago, and I've wanted to visit here ever since. In the 19th century, hundreds of ships would pass by this island every day, and they did so without the use of modern nautical technology. And because of storms, fog, currents, and the shoals, the moving sandbars off the island, there literally were hundreds of shipwrecks that have occurred within a few miles of the shores of this island. This museum highlights a volunteer organization that was formed nearly 2 centuries ago. Because of the shipwrecks, a group of men from Boston got into the life-saving business. This museum tells some of the unique stories of this group that called themselves the Humane Society. This group would build huts every 5 miles along the shoreline, and they would man these huts, scanning the horizon, looking for shipwrecks. If a ship went down, they would go out and risk everything to save as many as they could. They didn't do it for fame, they didn't do it for money, they did it simply because they valued human life. In fact, they adopted a motto that became the unofficial motto of the Coast Guard. You have to go out, you don't have to come back. That's a catchy slogan, if it's someone else's slogan. You think that wouldn't entice many to join the Humane Society, but it did. I loved reading the stories of these people who would risk everything, even their own lives, to save people they had never met, faces they had never seen, and names they would never know. The most famous story happened January 20th, 1892. It was a rescue in which they traveled 15 miles one way in a blizzard, and they were gone for 26 hours. And although they did return, they were gone so long that the rest of the members of the Humane Society assumed that all were lost. But for the sake of human lives, they had gone anyway. Their motto rang true. You have to go out. You don't have to come back. Over time, things changed. Eventually, the government organized a society that became known as the Coast Guard. And for a while here on Nantucket Island, the Coast Guard teamed together with the Humane Society, which became known as the Life-Saving Society, for rescue. But eventually the thinking became this. The Coast Guard, they're the professionals, they're paid, they have more training. So the Life-Saving Society stopped manning the huts, they stopped scanning the horizon, they stopped going out for rescue. But a strange thing happened. They just couldn't get themselves to disband. In fact, today the Life-Saving Society still exists. They gather for dinner, social occasions, they enjoy being together. They're just not in the life-saving business anymore. The church is a life-saving station. It's the final command Jesus gave his disciples, and it's to be our primary mission. We must not allow our church to become a social club while we simply speak of saving lives. It's too easy for a church to talk about being a life-saving station, to speak of the days when we were a life-saving station, to send a lot of money to other places for life-saving purposes, to send people to other places for life-saving purposes, and occasionally even go ourselves for a week or two. But then at home, focus on making sure that our life-saving station is most comfortable for us. When Jesus left this earth, his final words were to turn this rescue effort over to those who loved him, loved people, and were willing to pledge their very lives so as to live out the motto, we must go out, we don't have to come back. Jesus is still looking for people to be in the life-saving business. It is the Great Commission, not a great idea or an ideal proposal. It's the Great Commission, and it's worthy of our very lives. That's what Christ followers do.